At the end of my short talk, I would like to invite all of you to the upcoming 26th National and First International Congress, Pharmacology Congress, organized by the Turkish Pharmacological Society between October 4 and 6. In the Congress, there will be also a session introducing BPS assessment for prescribing skills. For those of you just joining us, welcome again. I hope we will have a nice and interactive discussion during the webinar. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you very much, Professor Yeşim. And now we will have another introductory speech from Mr. Alex Fox, who is representing BPS assessment here.
Thank you, Sahim, and thank you, Professor Yeşim, for the kind words. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that okay. So I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to BPS assessment and how that fits into the British Pharmacological Society. So I'm Alex Fox, I'm the Sales Director for BPS Assessment. BPS Assessment is the assessment and learning branch of the British Pharmacological Society, which is a membership organisation with 4,000 members in over 60 countries. And our mission is to drive improvement in medication safety worldwide through knowledge, assessment and learning. So we support the work of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, students and educators all over the world by identifying knowledge gaps. And we currently have partners in 15 countries across the globe. And we've created high quality evidence-based learning and assessment materials written by in-practice experts. And our tagline is better prescribing, better patient safety. So why do we do this? Well, this was a study in England in 2017 that detected 237 million medication errors, roughly 1 in 10. And of those, 22 were potentially clinically significant prescribing errors in primary care. And it found out that the definitely avoidable ADRs cost £100 million per year, consumed 182,000 bed days, caused 712 deaths and contributed to 1,700 deaths. That's in the NHS in England in 1 year. So if you extrapolate those figures globally, we can see there's an issue with prescribing skills everywhere. So as a result of that, the PSA competency blueprint was developed, and through our delivery of the prescribing skills assessment, we test 8 areas of prescribing competency in prescribing, prescription writing, prescription review, planning management, providing information, calculation skills, adverse drug reactions, drug monitoring and data interpretation. And we've built an integrated platform that contains all the key elements to run an assessment. So from localized assessment and practice papers, a variety of user roles and access rights. We have e-learning, which supports the assessments. There's assessment event management, and we provide detailed post-assessment analysis and review when we provide assessments to institutions. So that's a very sort of quick run through of what BPS assessment is and what we do. So in Turkey, we're proud to be working with our partners Online Bilgi to deliver this webinar and to support our efforts to promote this in the region. We're delighted to have Koç University as our partner, and we thank them for taking the time to be at this talk today. And thank you also to TFD for supporting this webinar. So I'm now going to hand you over to our medical director, Simon Maxwell. And he is an expert in the field, and he's been very, very influential in delivering the PSA in the UK. So Simon, over to you. I think you might be on mute.
Your mic, Simon.
Yeah, Okay, hopefully you can all hear me now. So I'd like to thank everybody who's involved with the Turkish Association for inviting me to talk at this meeting. I talk on behalf of both the British Pharmacological Society and BPS assessment. I should say a special thank you to everybody for taking the trouble to speak in English. We sometimes forget how lucky we are that we get to walk into every meeting and speak our native language. So I really appreciate that. This talk would have taken twice as long if I'd been forced to go to Google Translate and try and deliver it in Turkish. So I'm going to run very rapidly through how we develop the prescribing skills assessment, how we deliver it, and what I think it actually means now to the educational process within the United Kingdom. Alex has already suggested on the right-hand side of this screen the kind of cost in terms of finances, but also in terms of damage to patients, which probably takes place every year in the UK. And perhaps we shouldn't be surprised things go wrong so often when we actually look in the centre of the screen at the kind of cognitive challenge of prescribing, finding a drug dose, route and frequency combination, but taking into account all of the other factors that might influence that: age, sex, genetics, interacting diseases, and drugs. So at the moment, it's thought that around about 10% of UK hospital prescriptions probably contain some kind of an error and could be improved. And in primary care, that's around about 5%. We have a lot of unwanted adverse drug reactions, which we also know could have been avoided if prescribers had been performing a little bit more judiciously. So our journey started about 15 years ago when we started asking around and undertaking surveys and studies looking at what people thought about prescribing and prescribing education. And I'm not going to go into all the individual studies, but this slide shows you the main take-home messages. Firstly, that in our hospitals, new doctors take on a large part of the prescribing. They generally felt underprepared for doing that prescribing. They felt that their medical schools hadn't provided them sufficient practice for the practicalities of that job, and prescribing was the part of their work that they feared the most. But what we also noted was that the trainers, the people who supervised them in their jobs in hospital, also felt that prescribing was a skill which just hadn't had enough attention. So a lot of stakeholders, the General Medical Council, British Pharmacological Society, the British Medical Association, the postgraduate deans all got together to form a safe prescribing working group 13 years ago now. And that came up with several important conclusions. Firstly, that we needed to define clearly the learning outcomes that would be expected of anybody stepping out of a UK medical school and beginning their work as a prescriber. Secondarily, we needed a national e-learning strategy rather than 34 medical schools all trying to construct their own. And finally, we needed a reliable assessment that would allow the medical students and their medical schools to demonstrate that the learning outcomes had been met. And it's mainly that outcome from this group that I'm going to speak about today. So what about the prescribing skills assessment? Well, in the UK, we call it the prescribing safety assessment, just to separate it out from our international collaborations. But essentially, we're talking about the same thing. This was a collaboration between the British Pharmacological Society and the Medical Schools Council themselves. It's a national prescribing assessment, and we thought it important to have a well-validated prescribing assessment in place for clinical governance reasons, because we don't want patients to be harmed by unsafe prescribers, but also for educational reasons. We as teachers want to know whether in fact our trainees are picking up the right skills and knowledge. And so to have a well-validated, reliable assessment that is able to show these things, we felt was going to be very important in terms of the overall capabilities that we had in medical schools. And when we started this process, there was really no validated, reliable and widely accepted measure that we could find. So we felt we needed to do this on a national level because we would pool the resources of all of the different medical schools. We would work together to raise and unify standards all around the country, because after all of the graduates of medical schools were going to work in the same health service. It would mean there was a fair assessment that all students had to take, and it would allow us to really find out as individual medical schools whether in fact we were being successful in training our students. So the basic principles of our assessment was that this would have to be passed before starting work as a hospital prescriber. It would be based on real clinical cases that were relevant to junior prescribers in the first 2 years of their practice. It would be delivered online, which was a radical decision in 2010, although it now seems obvious, but at the time there weren't many large-scale medical assessments being delivered online. We also decided it would be open book, so just as they would when they practice in reality, they would have access to the British National Formulary when they did this assessment. And this was not just to be about knowledge. Wherever possible, we have questions that test skills and deductive powers. So as Alex has already suggested to you, our assessment is made up of 8 different components that we think test the skills that are required by junior hospital doctors when they start practicing. So those include prescribing new medicines, reviewing prescriptions that have been written by others, planning the management of things like acute asthma, providing information to patients about their medicines, undertaking calculation skills, dealing with and preventing adverse drug reactions, knowing how to monitor the effects of medicines, and how to interpret data relevant to medicines. And we thought that this just about covered most of the situations that we wanted our graduates to be able to tackle. We've now worked in lots of parts of the world, and I have to say nobody has yet come up with a fundamentally new issue that is not tackled within those 8 domains. Most of the marks, or sorry, about 40% of the marks go on the prescribing and another large chunk on prescription review, because we thought those were the 2 most important sections. And our questions are written to cover situations in medicine, surgery, elderly care, pediatrics, psychiatry, obstetrics and gynecology, and general practice. So we deliver all of this from a central server and assessment system. This is where we do all the authoring of our questions, editing them, the quality assurance and item banking. We build the assessments, we deliver them to medical schools through this system, do some psychometric analysis and keep the drug bank upon which the whole thing is based. So we built that from the ground up. It's not someone else's system. We designed it specifically for the purpose of prescribing assessment. So we've now got an item bank that probably contains around about 4,000 question items in the different styles that I've already highlighted. These items are all written to a very specific standard. They're all set out in a similar way, with presentation, examinations and investigations followed by the question. And you will see on the right-hand side of this screen, you will see that we insist on very full justification of any of the answers, because as well as being a pass-fail high-stakes assessment, this assessment is also used as practice and feedback to students. So it's important if they get questions wrong and they're in practice mode, then that they will be able to see an explanation as to why they got those questions wrong. All of our questions are written by a team of about 100 item authors who are senior and junior doctors and pharmacists, and they all go through a very tight quality assurance process, which includes 4 different stages. They get seen by a lot of eyes before they get put in front of medical students in real assessments. And as you can see from that slide, not only do we provide pass-fail assessment events, but we also provide practice materials for those who are registered for those assessments so they can actually get practice. And personally, I think that's the most important part of this whole process. So how do we deliver the prescribing skills or safety assessment in the UK? Well, all UK final year medical students, that's about 7,500, have to take this before they qualify and prescribe in UK hospitals. There are about 34 medical schools. All the people who are registered for this assessment get access to 4 practice assessments to have a go and get feedback before they actually have to do the real pass-fail assessment. Each year between February and June, we deliver about 200 events to those 34 medical schools spread out over 4 days. Because it's an electronic system, we get rapid marking and return of the results. We allow a repeating cycle for those people who fail the assessment, and we also now deliver the assessment to all overseas doctors who come to work in the UK to do their training from wherever they come, have to do this assessment as well. This is what the assessment looks like to the students. You can see a clinical case on the left, a prescribing request, and then they start typing drug names into the form at the top right, and there is predictive texting. So once they've typed in 3 letters, they get a drop-down list of the options, and of course they continue to type, and that drop-down list gets narrower and narrower. Sometimes there are additional illustrations that form part of the case as well. So there's a completed prescription, and that prescription is automatically scored against a template in the background of the system, which can sometimes include hundreds of drug order sentences with scoring from 10 marks if it's absolutely correct, all the way down to 2 marks if somebody has done something which is right but is well short of what should be the correct answer. Here's a prescription review question. So a lot of our questions are based on reviewing prescriptions written by others. So there's a case, 2 questions about the drugs that the patient is taking, and then the candidate has to answer those questions by putting the appropriate ticks next to the prescriptions. That's a standard multiple choice style question. There are tools that are available in the assessment system, so the students get to see a list of abbreviations if they're unsure as to what those abbreviations are. They have access to the British National Formulary to help them as they go through if they so wish, although this is a fairly time restricted assessment, so they can't just spend half a day looking up what is said in the British National Formulary. They have an average of about 1 to 2 minutes for each question, so they do have to work their way through the questions quite quickly. There's a calculator that's available, and there's also a dashboard that allows them to know where they are in the assessment, how many questions they've answered correctly or not. And as I've already shown you, you can bring up illustrations for certain styles of questions. So when they exit the assessment, they get a summary of all the activity. There are normally more than 8 questions, 60 in a standard assessment, but it tells them how many they've answered and not answered, and any that they've marked for review because they wanted to go back. And once they've finished, they press finish test and they leave. Just to give you an idea, we've just finished PSA 2021 in the UK, so around about 8,000 students from 34 UK medical schools took part. We also deliver this as routine to overseas medical schools. The pass rate on the first attempt for those students was 93%, and the reliability of the assessment is from about 0.75 to 0.8 Cronbach's alpha, which many of you will be familiar with. Now, this is an exercise about feedback. So the first thing is that we feed back to the students. So when they do practice papers and the real thing, they get personalized feedback about their scoring in the individual sections of the assessment that they can go in and look at. And it's from this screen that they will see their result in the pass-fail assessment as well. And they can print off certificates to show that they've scored particular amounts in particular assessments if they need to do so. But I think a very important part of this whole exercise is that when they go and do practice papers, they can answer the questions, but they then get feedback and scoring on the answers that they've given. And I think this is a particularly powerful tool. I think we all know that medical students and doctors are very competitive. They like to do better than each other. They like to test themselves. And I think that this plus the feedback that they get to tell them if they've gone wrong or not given the right answer is very powerful indeed. And we provide feedback and scoring in the practice papers for all the different kinds of assessment. We also feed back to medical schools. So every year, the medical schools themselves get to see how their candidates have performed. And this is just an example from about 5 years ago. And you can see the variation in scores between the different medical schools. We don't tell each medical school which the other ones are, but each medical school knows which school it is, and so has a good opportunity to see where they stand in relation to normal. But I'd like you to compare that graph of the different scores in different medical school cohorts in 2016 with what we saw this year. And I think what you can see is that there's been a coming together of performance of all of those different medical schools. There are not so many outliers now. And I think that's been one of the powerful actions of the prescribing skills assessment, is that it's actually forced those schools who perhaps didn't perform so well 5 years ago to up their game and provide a stronger performance, better teaching perhaps to their students. So I think it's been a really powerful tool to unify and raise standards between our different medical schools. The candidates or the students actually feed back to us as well. They tell us what they think about the assessment. Every single candidate fills feedback out at the end, as well as free text comments about what they think about prescribing education and assessment. And that's been extremely valuable in helping us to develop the assessment. An interesting question that we ask of them is how much prescribing they do in undergraduate medical education. And I'm pleased to say that the numbers who think they write more than 10 prescriptions while they're medical students, I think, is getting better and better year by year. When we first started this, hardly anybody thought they did any practice prescriptions in medical school. So I think that has been very important. So we built what have we achieved? We built a new online assessment system dedicated to prescribing safety, written about 4,000 question items. We've had about 80,000 UK doctors now go through this process over the last 8 years or so, run 2,000 summative events in the UK alone, let alone around the world, automatically marked 750,000 prescriptions. And I think most importantly, we've introduced a new national online assessment, which I think is supporting improvements in prescribing competency around the UK. What does the future hold for the assessment? Well, we've been involved with other organisations providing assessments to more senior doctors. We're involved with pharmacists here in the UK and nurse prescribers, and we've got a lot of international collaborations going on, including, I'm delighted to say, with Koch University in Turkey, but we hope others might follow. Just to finish, I would say that we haven't just been working on assessment, we've also been working on delivering a program currently of about 60 e-learning modules in clinical pharmacology and prescribing delivered online, which I think Alex briefly mentioned earlier on. So these are delivered largely to earlier stage medical students at the moment, but also we have some pharmacy students who use these, and they basically provide an online opportunity just to go through with feedback and do some learning in topics in clinical pharmacology and prescribing. So, Chair, that really just brings me to my summary points, which is that I'm sure we all agree in this symposium anyway, that poor prescribing in clinical practice is not a good thing, but does happen, and it's a key clinical skill that we ought to improve. I would say the prescribing skills assessment has been introduced very successfully into UK medical schools and to some extent into postgraduate education. We think it's raising basic standards of prescribing competency, it's providing practice, even for those who don't engage in pass-fail assessments. There are lots of useful practice materials, and we've added to that e-learning sessions. So anybody who wants to learn more, there are sort of plenty of other locations they can go to. So I think I will leave it there and answer any questions in any time that's left.
Thank you very much, Professor Simon, for your presentation. And it was really great to see how you managed to build up BPSA as well as the outcomes of BPSA among the pharmaceutical students. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And now, if there is any questions that you would like to address Professor Simon, please feel free to add it on the chat box. We will be following up the chat box and we will be sharing your questions. And our next speaker is Professor Hakan from Koç University. And he will be giving information about durational pharmacotherapy teaching, which is the Groningen Revisited. So, Professor Hakan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, and thanks, Simon, for such a good introduction. It really helps me to make it my job much easier. I can go and start sharing my presentation. Just a minute. Yeah, it's I have lots of windows open. So sorry about that. I think you can see my presentation, right?
Yes, Professor Hakan, we can see it very well.
Okay, so if I go back to the background, Yeşim mentioned that in 1995 it was an important publication, the Guide to Good Prescribing. Actually, that was a very important achievement at that time, because WHO has started to work on action program on essential drugs back in 1980s, and seeing that the clinical pharmacology skills in medical schools and in the daily practice are not very good. So it was a big achievement, since this guide actually serves a very important tool to understand the mechanics of the prescription writing. And we jumped into this train actually, not very late, as Yeşim mentioned in the introduction. And in 1999, we already had the guide translated into Turkish, and the Ministry of Health has started a program so that the clinical pharmacology teaching, and especially with a focus on prescription writing skills, gets into the medical curriculum. And ever since, starting from 2000, 1 week clinical pharmacology training clerkship in clinical years been implemented in Turkish medical curriculum. But even though the good prescription skills is now adopted by most medical schools in Turkey and included in national core curriculum, still irrational prescribing is very common in daily lives. So similarly, in a recent paper published with the Vries and Holger Zale, these are the people who are at the very first endeavor of the Guide to Good Prescribing project. They published an overview, or a little bit of criticism, saying that where are we going? Quo vadis? Okay, so because the problem here is to shift from the cognitive level to the behavior level, and it's still a very big problem, even though the the mechanistic dissection of the prescription writing process has been pretty much very in detailed form explained in the guide, and also as a manual how to use it. So another initiative, actually, starting by the ECPT, a paper published in Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics with a task group on the clinical pharmacology teaching. They published 11 commandments, akin with the 10 commandments, of what medical pharmacology people should do, the community should do to improve pharmacology teaching. So they advocated that the pharmacology teaching needs to be throughout the entire medical curriculum, needs to be given either in simulated or in clinical environments. At the core, there must be a core drugs list, actually, or a student formulary. Objectives are compatible with the learning environment. A guide to good prescribing should be used more intensively. There must be more online learning resources, and we need to share those resources as well. And near peer education is very important too, as well as the clinical pharmacists and nurse prescribers that are also involved in the teaching. A robust and separate clinical pharmacology teaching assessment, a valid and reliable final prescription assessment, and also prescribing should be assessed in a simulated or clinical context. So I put some check marks, with the with the slide, showing that these are the stress points and our focus, actually, to complete these requirements or commandments in the pharmacology education. So the blues are, we are still far from reaching that that goal. So in fourth year rational pharmacotherapy clerkship at Koç University School of Medicine, we use pretty much the same line, the Groningen system, but for the reasons that I will explain later, we also wish to get something more, especially regarding the assessment part of the clerkship period. So the content actually is basically based on the Guide to Good Prescribing and indication-based scenarios. So we developed 6 important indications that we selected, regarding the task for a family physician at the primary care: essential hypertension, bronchial asthma, peptic ulcer, and reflux disease, pain management, respiratory infections, and urinary tract infections. I think this is almost covers a good chunk of the prescription requirements that those people are dealing in their daily routine. So we have electronic resources in our disposal, like UpToDate and Lexicomp and Rx Media Pharma, which could be also to some extent equates the BNF in Britain. Unfortunately, we don't have a BNF. Our classroom activities are based mainly on the PBL sessions, guided reading and role-playing, extensively role-playing among students. Content is delivered, face-to-face, either as a problem-based learning sessions, but since COVID, we converted all our infrastructure into Zoom breakout rooms, again with the problem-based learning sessions delivered by Blackboard content management system. And the assessment is based on mock OSCEs and just lately BPS prescription safety assessment. We also have a series of self-efficacy surveys and feedbacks throughout the whole clerkship, which lasts about a week, and final assessment is based on OSCE type exams actually. So as an example as given in here, we are very satisfied with the Blackboard content delivery system, and I think it's so useful and I could say user-friendly that even if this year we are going to do face-to-face problem-based learning sessions, we will deliver all content through the Blackboard system actually. So the Blackboard system really gives you a very detailed overview of the whole process actually. I can show you several tasks that I assigned to the students and their achievement levels and their points that they may get from each and every assessment and homework kind of assignments. I really suggest many medical schools now are able to get those kind of content delivery systems. Yeah, this is also some of the examples of the forms. All forms can be now filled out with the PDF type forms. Prescription sheets and pharmacotherapy follow-up form and etc. Everything is in there, as well as many of our full text resources like the Guide to Good Prescribing and the drug price list and so forth and so on. Okay, so this is an example of the prescription writing tests. We initially start the clerkship by given a task to the students to write a prescription, and initially they pretty much they are not able to write it correctly. Of course, that's an example given in here as a first, and on the exit they do it much better as you would expect. Okay, and we can monitor all these through the Blackboard content management system. So in the meantime, we also had a brief encounter with British Pharmacological Society at the 2019 ECT Congress in Stockholm, and Dr. Ezgi Gülmez has contacted with, I guess, Simon, with you, but I'm not quite sure.
I think it was David James.
Yeah, okay. So, and then we just get a license agreement finalized last year, and we started this cooperation, and I am really truly satisfied with this. Since all items in the exams are tailored according to CUSOM curriculum, and we finalized the items with joint consultations to meet the needs of the learning objectives that we have actually. And we used in two different groups, one with the analgesics and the other one in respiratory infections. We also had an intern program, and Dr. Gülmez will talk about that just a little bit later. Okay, so basically our integration includes the pain management and bacterial respiratory infections, two different subject groups. Students may have 8-item revision sets, and we give this revision set as a first day exam, and then we open it to student use. Then at the end, they need to pass a 15-item formative paper, but this has only a 20% of weight in the total pass note, actually. So prescription skill assessment, as Simon explained, contained several different sections, and it's very important to get feedback from these, skills assessment for us. But let me just, give you a little bit an overview of our assessment schedule. So we get this BPSA test as a 20% of total weight at day 4. But also in the same day, they pass a mock OSCE with 1 case and 3 stations, and we give feedback because this is very useful to get feedback actually right after mock OSCE to privately show the students how they performed in the OSCE. That will be for the next day very vital for their pass or fail status. In the 5th day of clerkship, we got simulated patients, 6 simulated patients in 3 rooms, 3 cases with 3 assessors. Each one of us are in a assessment room, and we have a special OSCE center for that, and it's very well equipped actually. We got 2 cases in English and 1 case in Turkish, and students visit each case and have to obtain a pass note in at least 2 cases. Okay, this is our benchmark, threshold for the pass note. And then we deliver notes like honor, pass, and fail without any, grading, numerical grading. And this is how it goes, throughout the, throughout the year. And then we also have the self-efficacy surveys delivered through Qualtrics platform. And if you look at this, surveys, the blues are pre-training, orange is post-training, and gray are, post-OSCE. Okay, when they know how they performed in the OSCE, objective structured clinical examination. So, and we divided this survey under the rubrics that covers the Groningen system and also the 8 blueprint sections of the prescription safety assessment. So the first slide shows the performance status, or how they perceive their performance at the very beginning, at the end of the training, and then at the end of the exam for the students. And as you see, at the very beginning, they are not very good, and they know that they are not very good in writing prescriptions or repeat prescriptions or complete correct prescription. Either with the verification of the suitability and selection of a drug, and they didn't have any P drug list as well. Their confidence exceeds over 80% in an aggregate fashion after the training, as we would expect. But if you look at the PSA assessments, the overall scores are a little bit less, despite the fact that this is a self-assessment, and they are not very confident at the very beginning and also at the end, maybe to some extent, for the dose calculations, foreseeing the adverse drug reactions, and monitoring the treatment. So these are the especially important sections that they are not very confident with. And if you look at the overall at the rightmost column, their confidence level is a little bit less than 80%, with a quite large standard deviation, as you see here. So it is somewhat expected, and also together with this, we have the BPSA feedback, which gives you a very nice picture of how students performed. Although I should mention that we have two important disadvantages in our exams. We don't have the open book type possibility. Because we don't have the BNF, and also students, because of the Turkish exam traditions, they are not very keen to use open book type exams. Okay, this is not a qualifying. This is a qualifying exam. Nevertheless, there is no ranking here. Okay, they need to use their information. They need to use their tools actually throughout the exam, but they fail to use it because they are not accustomed of this type of exams. Nevertheless, they still got without any specific preparation, quite okay kind of results. But we have some trailing students as well. But most importantly, what we found also that our training lacks the dose calculations and therapeutic drug monitoring. So we will in the next round add those features in our try to add those features in our training program as well. So as you see here, Groningen system still is a quite efficient system, although it's very labor intensive. But with the tool like BPSA, this feedback, and you may tailor those requirements and also make it more refined our education programs. So as a conclusion, clinical pharmacology training is demanding, but the results are encouraging, at least for the short term. And students need more pharmacological guidance well into the clinical years. So this is, I think, one of the important take-home message for the pharmacology community in Turkey, that we need to lobby this throughout Turkey to make it more visible, actually. And the 6 selected indications that we put into our curriculum covers more than 50% of the common conditions seen in primary care. Therefore, we think that this is a good start to build a P-drug list. And I think at the very end, in a comprehensive pharmacology education that Dr. Gülmez will talk about right after me, requires also to have a firm and very able P-drug list for each and every medical student at the end of their training in medical school training before their graduation, and be able to use this P-drug list as a personal formulary for their ongoing primary care duties. And prescription safety assessment serves as a benchmark to test the cognitive and behavioral skill levels of the students. And we also delighted to use it in our education. And we are still experimenting the better ways to get more of the PSA. But this is always an unrelenting type of job for us for the future. Okay, thank you for listening to me, and I hand it over. And thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Hakan Erer, for your valuable presentation. It was really great to see how you implemented BPSA into your training program, education program at your institution, and the benefits coming out of it. So thanks for your presentation once again. Now we will proceed with Professor Sinem Ezgi Gülmez, and she will be giving us an information about her presentation, which is continuous pharmacology training starting from the 3rd year of medical school till graduation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome everyone. I just will share my slides. I hope everyone is seeing now.
Yes, we can see
The
your screen.
presentation mode. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks so much. It's with great pleasure and honor to be together with you during this webinar, and thanks to the PCA and Turkish Pharmacological Society and Bilgi Online System for bringing us together. That we believe, this is very important to share our experiences with our colleagues, indeed to improve pharmacology teaching and rational pharmacotherapy. So indeed, Professor Simon Maxwell and Professor Hakan Örer made my speech a lot easier. My talk is titled as Continuous Pharmacology Teaching, starting from the third year of medical school at Koç University Medical School till graduation, with the integration of BPS-PCA. But before, what will I focus? That is the internship part. I just would like to share how we teach pharmacology at Koç University School of Medicine. We all know, and most of us would agree, that the conference type lectures, circle lectures are very important for pharmacology teaching. And indeed, we have these conference type lectures at the third year of medical education. And during the fourth year of medical education, we have this rational pharmacotherapy clerkship, for which Professor Hakan Örer has shared in detail how we perform this clerkship using the Groningen model, and hopefully and happily the integration of BPS-PCA starting from the last academic year. And in the fifth year, we have case-based interactive lectures, although a little bit less, but never mind. And in this sixth year, we all know that this is the internship year, we have rational use of medicines sessions within the public health rotation. For the last 3 years that I started at working at Koç University School of Medicine, as well as the implementation or integration of PCA starting from the last academic year. So what we have done, actually, my talk will focus on this internship year, how we integrated the BPS assessment. You are now familiar with the BPS assessment, so I will not go into the details. But different from the rational pharmacotherapy clerkship, we have implemented the BPS-PCA blueprint item set for our interns, actually. And this blueprint item set is compatible with the national core curriculum as well as with our pharmacology curriculum at Koç University School of Medicine. Before we had performed the assessment, BPS blueprint assessment to the interns, there was a 30-item practice set, which was made open to all interns so that they could study and see how it works, actually. And then we had two intern groups, actually, where we have performed this BPS blueprint assessment. That means the 30-item invigilated paper. As you all know, our Turkish colleagues, that there's no mandatory exam during the internship year at the medical schools in Turkey. So actually, this PCA exam was voluntary. So we had to work, actually, as the Department of Medical Pharmacology to convince, let's say, to invite our interns, the sixth-year medical students, to take this exam, because that would be voluntary. Although most of them worked with the practice set, the number of interns actually who took the 30-item invigilated paper was not that many. Nevertheless, the feedback that we have received from the ones who took the PCA blueprint exam, that was very positive, that they were able to assess themselves with regards to their prescribing skills, with regards to their pharmacology knowledge, with regards to their other medical knowledges, actually, and nothing was missing from the curriculum. Actually, it covered what should have been taught during the throughout the medical education. Actually, also one point perhaps I would like to share, as Professor Hakan Orer already mentioned, that we didn't have access to the BNF, but this is nothing to do with the BPS. This is with the BNF itself. So they used the RX Media Pharma online drug information resource that is used in Turkey, and the developer of this RX Media Pharma, Professor Üstüneş, indeed supports the clinical pharmacology teaching and everything. So thanks to them as well. Before our interns actually took the 30-item invigilated paper, we performed the self-efficacy survey, just as we did for the fourth-year medical students during their clerkship, using the Qualtrics survey delivery system. Again, since this is a voluntary process, let's say, or perhaps they were just they were excited with their graduation and so on. There weren't many interns who filled up or who completed the survey. So unfortunately, I cannot present you the results of this self-efficacy surveys. But what we can share actually with you is that the feedback we received from the interns, actually oral during our conversations just after the exam and so on, they were very content to have assessed their prescribing skills by this BPS assessment at an international, level or quality, let's say. Another thing that we do during the internship year is that, as I have mentioned, the rational use of medicine sessions within the public health rotation. There's no pharmacology rotation during the internship year, but our colleagues from the Department of Public Health has kindly provided us some hours to perform these sessions, and I've been doing them for the last 3 years. So with the integration and implementation of BPS assessment, actually, the content of these rational use of medicine sessions has developed, and I've been doing the discussions around the rational use of medicines principles with the PCA, 8 sections that the Professor Simon Maxwell and Hakan Orer has already mentioned. Also, I've given them some different indications to create their personal formularies, different indications, other indications different than they had during their rational pharmacotherapy clerkship. One thing perhaps we would like to share with you is that throughout this, our continuous pharmacology teaching at Koç University School of Medicine, this teaching through the internship year actually has been supported by a teaching innovation grant by Koç University Office of Learning and Teaching with the title Outcome-Based Integrated Pharmacology Education and Prescribing Skill Development at Koç University School of Medicine. So how we did it, this is, as you have been informed, actually, the PCA is delivered online. It's an online exam. So we have a very high quality and, technically supported computer room at Koç University School of Nurse at Koç University Hospital with different, individual computers. So we had 2 different intern groups. One PCA blueprint was done at the beginning of their internship, and for the other group it was done at the end of their the clerkships. So the duration of this exam is actually an hour for 30 questions, let's say 30 items. And also another challenge was, as we all experienced and still experiencing, it was during the pandemic rules. So all pandemic rules were indeed respected. Since this was voluntary, taken by the interns, there was no obligation, it wasn't mandatory at all. But it provided a positive feedback to us, indeed, to develop and improve our pharmacology teaching and rational pharmacotherapy teaching, as well as for our students, medical students, to develop their prescribing skills. Our ultimate goal is now to continue our collaboration, I wouldn't exaggerate, but our privileged academic collaboration with the PCA. And as we have had now experience with this PCA blueprint application in the internship year, our plan is to apply a pass mark to the BPS PCA papers for perhaps, and to make it a mandatory exam, but delivered at the end of the 5th year. That means before they would qualify for the internship. This is definitely not our decision, not a decision to only us, but it will be the decision by the Koç University. So our Department of Medical Pharmacology is currently working on it. Before I finish my talk, I just would like to share my thanks. That's a part of the internship, the integration of BPS to the internship year. And I just would like to take the opportunity to thank Professor Simon Maxwell, whom I know since, I was doing my residency in medical pharmacology years ago. It's now a great honor to collaborate with you with this BPS assessment. Dr. Lynn Bollington, that we worked very closely for the items and questions that for our clerkship and the internship years. Alex Fox, that we have been in communication from the beginning. And special thanks to Alexander Cole and Peter Wright, who provided technical support throughout the year, especially during the pandemic. And I just would like to introduce you, our marvelous Department of Medical Pharmacology. We are 3 faculty members, and thanks to them for their great enthusiasm. Professor Hakan Örer, who has a great experience and wisdom and knowledge from the beginning, that I've learned a lot from him and still learning. And thanks to Assistant Professor Gülnar Özcan for her courage and enthusiasm for this hard work. And this is our beautiful Koç University campus in Rumeli Feneri. And thanks for your attention. I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Gülmez, for providing information about the application of BPSA in Koç University. And also thanks for sharing the fantastic view that you have at your institution. Professor Maxwell has a reply for you, and he's saying that the feeling is mutual, by the way. So please be informed about that. And yes, for our participants, please share if you have any questions regarding any presentation which our valuable speakers have completed. So we would like to happy to address your questions. And now I am checking the chat box. Yes, we have one question, and I think this question goes to Professor Sinem Ezgi Gülmez or Professor Hakan Örer. The question is, what kind of feedbacks have you received from your students regarding the BPSA? So I think there was some information regarding on Professor Hakan Örer's presentation. There was some information regarding the outcomes of the BPSA tool, but it will be great if you can provide any further feedbacks that you have received from your students.
Okay, I can give a couple.
Hakan, you may start first. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we, we usually get feedback, every single day, actually, from the students. This includes, it's a Groningen type feedback. That's the routine that we do. And that includes, a grading of the facilitators. And we sometimes get really mad about this. But, usually student reaction is very good. So that's why, we had a good support of the medical school administration to do those kind of, adventurous things and risky things. Because, if you are pushing too hard to students, and students really, piss you off, actually. Okay, so this is not returning you as a, thank you or something. There's no, masochistic type of behavior, of course. But joke, it's just a joke, actually. But if you come to the fact of the matter is, students, they know that pharmacology is something that they need at the end. But the fact that being confident takes a lot of hard work and sweat and tears. But and they are not willing to do this at the right moment. Sometimes we push a little bit more and push it hard. What we don't like it, is a faculty. They didn't do enough, studying or reviewing these, practice exams, because in the practice exams and the feedbacks, they are very useful for the real exam, but they didn't use it. So as much as we hoped, actually. But overall, they are very content because they know that they are going and doing those things that they really feel like a physician for the very first time, especially in the fourth year. And in the sixth year, most students who are interested in taking this BPS, PCA, PSA exam is that they are pretty much, those who want to go abroad to work. And they know that this exam is mandatory in the UK if they want to go to the UK, for instance. But, independent from that fact, even if they are, studying for Turkish residency exams, which are very competitive and very tough and very irrelevant in a way, because in the BPSA, actually everything is based on demonstrating your skills. It's not just memorizing those things. Okay, so you don't need to memorize it. So that's a big difference, and I think students also are very appreciative about this fact at the end. We are very satisfied, and that's why it gives us courage to continue this way, and we wish to continue. We hope to continue, actually, in the next year.
Thank you very much, Professor Hakan, for your answer.
I may add a few words.
Yes.
When you implement or integrate something quite new, brand new, let's say, you make the students, this is relevant for all of us, you make the students get out of their comfort zones. When something is new, that's a challenge. So that was a challenge for us, especially during the pandemic. But, this is a mutual work, getting regular feedbacks from the students and keeping our enthusiasm and, energy to continue this. That was, I think, the key or core values that we managed to do for this, for the integration of this PSA into our curriculum. So they were indeed a little bit in the beginning, the students were indeed a little bit, surprised, or let's say scared perhaps, or sometimes angry, or whatever you may call the emotions. But at the end, when they get the benefit and the results, we believe that it worked.
Thank you very much, Professor Gilmez. And also, Professor Maxwell just mentioned the same, as you indicated, that the students know that prescribing is important and usually appreciate help with it. And this is what UK experience suggests. So I think you all agree. about the importance of this prescribing assessment as well as implementing it into the curriculum. Then we have another question, which is also really nice, which is asking again the questioners to participate.
Mr. Shahin, I believe Professor Maxwell wanted to intervene.
No, not at all. I won't interrupt. I was just going to say that this is exactly how it was for us about 8 or 9 years ago when something new was introduced. Some people didn't understand or were resentful that there was an extra hurdle that had to be undertaken. But actually, it's now just routine. It's part of it. We take feedback from every single one of those 8,000 students, and although some of them maybe still complain, they wish they didn't have to, you know, it's just another burden to them. Actually, hardly any of them say that they wish they'd never had to do it. Most of them say they feel more confident at the end of it and appreciate that it is really an important part of the learning process. And I can't remember who it was, whether, but someone just said that, you know, they appreciate being tested out on something which is actually relevant to them. They get asked a lot of irrelevant things in medical school, but hardly any medical student ever says, this is not irrelevant, this is not relevant for my future. And I think they appreciate, they know that when they walk out of medical school, they're going to have a lot of drugs, a lot of prescriptions to write, a lot of prescriptions to review. So I think generally it's pretty well accepted in the UK now.
Thank you Professor Maxwell. Also sayın katılımcılar, eğer Türkçe yazmak isterseniz lütfen çekinmeyin. Biz o konuda da yardımcı olabiliriz. Hiç sorun değil. Şahin Bey, mikrofonunuz şu an kapalı galiba.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Tamam.
Can I add something?
Yes, please. I think Professor Yeşim, right? Yes, please.
Thank you for nice presentations, talks for my colleagues and for Simon Maxwell's talk. And I think the system BPS assessment are complementary to our rational drug prescribing teaching. Because now we are using this, we are teaching rational drug prescribing to the medical students in our faculty for more than 300 medical students, and we have to repeat the training program, one-week training program 3 times. Therefore, I think this system make this course easier to us if we add this system to the conventional rational drug prescribing course. Maybe we can earn some times for our depending on we can make it easier this system, I think. What do you think about the advantages of these systems to the facilitators and for gaining times for the academicians or students?
I don't know whether who that question was for, but what I would say is that the system that we described is largely automated. So you cannot do without personal interactions from experienced teachers, but I think it is efficient for teaching institutions in that most of the exercises and the feedback that is given afterwards is automated within the system. So I think it does provide some efficiency and time saving if you are having to repeat things multiple times. I think it probably makes things a bit easier.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question, Professor Yeşim Tunçok, and thanks for the answer, Professor Maxwell. We have another question from one of our participants, and I think the question addresses again the participants from Koç University. And Johnson is asking, how long does it take to integrate BPSA into Koç University curriculum or the teaching program? And she asks if you have faced with any kind of technical difficulty while implementing it. So maybe Professor Sinan or Professor Hakan.
Yeah, you know, I can say that there is no big difficulty actually for the integration, but if you know what you are expecting from the system, it's very easy. So we are, you know, we know what we have our objectives, and I think prescription safety assessment, by sheer definition, it really fits to our purpose. The only thing that we did, and it worked very well, is to get into, you know, deep down on the bubbles of the system. Actually, we need a specific topic and a specific context of questions. And I think they were very helpful. And Dr. Gülmez, you know, thanked in her speech to those, you know, editors, and also to Simon, to have such a, you know, flexible type of structure. So we gave them, you know, what type of drug use that we intended for, and they prepared the questions, or they selected those questions that are fit to our purpose. And since our objectives are very clear, and this didn't take too much time, and I think only with 1 or 2 meetings, actually, we finalized all things considered, actually. So, and the other thing is, you know, the drugs that we are using are pretty much the same that they are using in the UK. So there is no big deal. And, you know, we are also focusing on the primary care. So therefore, we didn't want any specialty type, you know, extreme type of use of drugs. We just wanted to go to the straight to the daily routine and the correct use in, you know, in the spectrum of the daily routine type of, you know, medical practice, actually. So this really was very helpful and very easy to solve, actually, for us.
Thank you very much, Professor Hakan.
I may add a few words. Yeah, I may add a few words. Completely agree. That was exactly what we have experienced and how we have collaborated with the BPS PCA team. Thanks to them. If you know what you would like to integrate to your teaching, it will happen. They're such an amazing team. And for the technical part, actually, Koç University and Koç University School of Medicine has a great technical, you know, support with the staff also. They were very kind, and it didn't take too much or too long for us to create, let's say, our new clerkship and internship integrations with the PSA.
Yeah, I just want to mention also that, you know, now that, you know, in order to pass, they need to pass this exam at the 4th year. So they may not get a certain, you know, threshold grades or points, but they need to pass this exam, at least take this exam I mentioned. And you know, taking this exam per se is a very important achievement, because it really requires lots of administrative work. And I really, you know, need to mention the administrative part of it, because it's not easy to change the rules to pass from this to that, actually. But, you know, I know many medical schools in Turkey that they have a very casual type of, you know, assessment. I think, one important, take-home message for you is that in order to get a, educational benefit, you need to have a very strong assessment modality in the clerkship program. It's not just, a freebie type of stuff. And if it is a freebie, it never gives you a good outcome for the student perspective, actually. Okay, and we really worked hard, and it really takes too much of toll from us, actually, because it really is a very time-consuming job, and doing those OSCE exams and so forth and so on. But it's worth it, actually. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Hakan. It is really great to see your feedbacks and also the positive steps and the easy steps in order to implement the system into your curriculum and the training program. We have one other question, which is asking what should be the way in order to have the BPSA at their own institution. One of the participants is asking for it. Please, this is a question I can answer. We have the partnership with BPSA for Turkey, so please feel free to get in touch with us in case of any questions, or if you would like to have the BPSA presentation once again, we can also organize it for your institution as well. I will share my screen. So for your further queries, you can reach out to us via my email, which is sahin.giray@onlinebilgi.com.tr or yaşambilimleri@onlinebilgi.com.tr. So these are the emails that you can reach out to us. I'm